Hello, this is Joe. Welcome back to the channel. Well, 4 videos ago, which would be in late August of 2025, I presented a video about buying a brand new typewriter, and this was it, the Nakajima WPT-150, and we went through a lot of details about the typewriter, showed the whole unboxing experience and using it. So I've had time now to use it quite a bit, and I've made a list of things I'd like to talk about. Sort of a follow-up video, a little more detail. I'm going to do some more comparisons with my other Daisywheel typewriter, the Brother SX4000. So if you're interested in these kind of typewriters, stay tuned because I have a lot of interesting information that you might find valuable. Stay tuned. Well, as it turns out, using the typewriter to make lists and document the whole experience of using the typewriter in preparation for this video is actually a really good way to test out the typewriter. Well, so one thing, I'm just kind of go down the list here and talk about different things. So one thing is when I unboxed the typewriter, it came with this clear plastic packing piece over the keyboard. And when I do keep it out on the table but not being used, I put this little cover over the keyboard just as a dust cover. Because, you know, I live in a rather dusty part of the world, the American Southwest. So it functions as a pretty good little dust cover when you're not actually using it. The other thing I talked about was I would have liked to make a cheat sheet, a little reference card about some of the features on the typewriter that you have to read the manual to understand. So in other words, there are a lot of features that you can see quite easily just because they're highlighted in green. The code key is in green, so you know that if you press the code key and then press that key, you can get to that feature. But there are a few other features that are not printed on the keys, and they involve multiple key commands. So I printed up a little reference sheet here. I actually printed this on the Brother typewriter, and the reason why is I wanted a small 15 character per inch typeface, and I haven't yet received any other Nakajima print wheels yet. But I used the 15 character per inch Brother print wheel to print this, and then on a cardstock, and then I laminated it with 2-inch packing tape, my usual method of poor man's laminator. Anyways, I just used some double-sided tape and stuck it to the front of the cover here, so it makes a nice reference. So if I want to see how to do some of these other features, I don't have to go run to the manual. It's just right there. So I appreciate the comments that you guys leave, because I know some of you out there are more experienced with these kind of electronic typewriters than I am. And one of you left a comment about the dust cover, the little flap that presses down to close up and cover up the mechanics of the typewriter. And it seemed a little stiff to open it because there's these little plastic tabs that kind of have to bend out of the way. And one of you suggested putting some light grease, just a tiny dab, on the little beveled surface of these 2 little points here. And I did that, and it helped a lot. It helps to lubricate it so you can close it easier and open it easier without potentially breaking the tabs off, if that could be a problem in the future. So yeah, very nice little tip. Thank you. Well, when you have a collection of 50 plus typewriters, oftentimes the problem could be storage. And especially with these electronic typewriters, they really are very sensitive to cleanliness, like especially dust and dirt building up on the parts of the carrier, like the slide rod and things like that, that it moves on. It's very particular about that being clean, and also getting dust and dirt in the keyboard. A manual typewriter, the linkages are not nearly as sensitive to dust and dirt as an electronic keyboard would be. So I'm taking a little hint from how I've been storing my Brother SX4000. And this is like an ad hoc kind of a method of keeping it clean. I'm sure there's a better way to do it. But this is how I've been keeping my Brother typewriter clean. I have one of these, I guess they're 13-gallon size trash bags. And these are the kind that have the drawstring, the plastic thing where you can pull it tight. And I'm using a Velcro little cable tie. I have bought a pack of these off Amazon a few years ago, like this. And so I put the typewriter in it sideways, like the opening of the bag is sideways. Put it in there, seal up the drawstring tight, put the Velcro around it, and now the typewriter is dust free. It's protected from dust. The dust can get on the outside of the bag, but I leave it vertically like this underneath one of my desks, so it doesn't really take up that much room, and the typewriter is safe and secure, and it's clean. And that's what I've been doing with the new Nakajima whenever it's not here being used. I could get my sewing machine out and make a fancy bag with, you know, a nice pattern and elastic and a hem and go all that route, and I might do that eventually, but having a little, just a trash bag, something as simple as that, does wonders for keeping the machine clean. So there's another little thing about this machine. The model number, as it's marketed in the United States, is WPT-150. But if you look underneath the machine on the bottom, there's a label here, and it actually says it is an AX-150. And it's actually manufactured by Mitsunami Asia Limited in Indonesia. The AX-150 is kind of like the international model number of this typewriter. So why I'm telling you that is if you want to search on the internet for print wheels, ribbon cassettes, erasing tape, and all that, you could also look for AX-150 besides WPT-150. So that'll give you a broader search for looking for those parts. And by the way, at least here in the United States, ribbons and correction tape are readily available, inexpensive. I bought a 6-pack of ribbons for $20 off Amazon, which is remarkably inexpensive. So another question people have had is, what about parts and service? Well, I found a website called nadist.com, nadist.com. This is Nakajima's North American distribution company, and they list all the Nakajima typewriters available. There are 6 of them available, and they also have exploded parts views of all the models, so you can look up a part number, and they're a wholesaler, so you can't buy it directly from them, but with a part number, you can order a part through a distributor, and they do have a list of distributors. So they list print wheels, and they have all the exploded views for service, but also they list these 6 typewriters. So the WPT-150 is actually the bottom of the line Nakajima typewriter. It's the least expensive, which is what I wanted to buy for this project. I wanted to make it the least expensive, the most accessible. The top of the line machine is called the AE830. If you look under product specifications, there will be a blow up of the features of this typewriter. So the 150, this typewriter here, the print wheels are all 100 characters on a print wheel. So a little bit more characters than the IBM Selectric 3 type element. Printing speed on the 150 and the 160 is 12 characters per second. Now, if you go to the higher-end Nakajima typewriter like the AE830, its print speed is 20 characters or 22 characters per second, based on which model. The 830 is 22 characters per second. So the 800 and 830 are definitely faster than the 150 and the 160s. So the 150 does not have a document memory. It has a full line correction memory only. And it has a buffer, a character buffer in memory, which is, the 150 has a 90 character line memory, a max of 90 characters. And the 150 has a 20 stroke character buffer. When you get to the end of the line and it does a carriage return, you can keep typing and it will store up to 20 strokes. The WPT-160 is a 30-stroke keystroke buffer. So I've turned off my battery-powered light and turned on these bigger lights here so we can see the table better. I didn't really talk at the first video about my impressions of the typing action or the speed of typing, other than to say that the keyboard key tension is very light, and for my sloppy typing style, I tend to make quite a few mistakes unless I'm extra particular about being very careful with typing. And I've gotten better with this typewriter for certain. But I should say that I was using a Smith Corona 6 Series type bar electric, like the Electra 220, a couple days ago, and I kind of have the same problem with those, even though the key tension is quite a bit heavier. I'm sloppy enough of a typist that I can, big sausage fingers, I can kind of hit between 2 keys or hit the wrong key, and any of these kind of electric or electronic typewriters with very short key throws, it doesn't take much to trigger a letter, and then you're off to the correction game or whatever. So, not unusual for me to have that problem with this machine, let me just say that. But I wanted to talk about the typing speed and typing impression with it. And first of all, when the machine is powered on like it is now, and you haven't been typing for a couple seconds, the print wheel homes itself. So let's say I'm typing, let's say the letter S for some reason. And if I hold it down, it'll type the same letter over and over. But if you might have heard a few seconds after I let go of the S, you might have heard the motor, it goes back and rehomes itself. So if you're typing rapidly and then you take a brief pause for a second and then continue typing, you might hear the print wheel rehome itself. And then as you type, it'll start moving and typing again. But that doesn't interrupt your typing action. In other words, this thing has the 12 character per second typing speed, and it has the memory buffer. You know, if you do a carriage return and keep typing, it's going to keep up with it. Okay, so now we should talk about the delay time between pressing a key and hearing the printing action happen. So if you hold down a key, it's going to auto repeat for you like that. But let's just pick, for some reason, I'll just pick two letters like SX, they're close by. I don't really sense a delay time with this typewriter. I mean, it's not conscious. I'm not conscious of it. If I was going to shoot this in high-speed frame rate and slow down the video and play it back, I could maybe detect when I press the key versus when the print wheel moves. But as a user of the typewriter, I'm just not conscious of a delay time that bothers me. And I think the comparison I made with the Brother SX4000, I'm a little more conscious of the delay time in the Brother than I am in the Nakajima. So whatever that means, I think the Brother is adequate for as far as typing speeds. It just doesn't bother me if there's any delay time. I'm fine with it. So let's talk about maximum typing speed. So before I found the Nakajima North American distribution website that had all the specs on the machine, I had to do a little printing test. But if you look at the 12 character per second maximum speed that they're telling you, so 12, we're using a Hewlett-Packard 11C, by the way, from 1983. I bought this brand new. So 12 characters per second, there's 60 seconds in a minute. So 720 characters in a minute, and then divide by, let's say a word is 5 characters, right? So 5 divide. So that looks like the maximum typing speed on this machine is 144 words per minute. Now, I did an actual test before I found the spec sheet. I did an actual test, and I wanted to see, first of all, what was the maximum print speed of this machine using the same character. So in other words, when you're in the auto repeat mode, the wheel doesn't move. It just stays in the same position. So that's the maximum speed that the print wheel can operate at. And of course, if it is typing at 12 characters per second, then it would be 144 words a minute, although having the same word, the same letter over and over again, it might be experimental poetry like I, or something, but that's not a practical piece of text. So any practical piece of text is going to be a lower speed. It depends on the letters. So this got me to thinking, well, first of all, what's the character layout of the print wheel for the Nakajima? And is there any logic to how the letters are oriented around the print wheel? And also, how does it compare to the Brother print wheels? There are two different manufacturers, two different standards. So that got me looking down a rabbit hole. So this is the print wheel letters in like maybe clockwise orientation, starting with the character that's at the top when it homes. And those are all the characters, all 100 characters. Now, what I was wanting to do to find worst case scenario, what's the slowest that the machine will type at, I wanted to pick two characters that were 50 characters apart because it's a 100 character print wheel. But I wanted them to be the same shifting. So in other words, in order to type this as fast as possible, I didn't want to have to switch between upper and lower case. So what I was able to find was left bracket and period. So left bracket is here, and then the period was over here. Those are 50 characters apart. Left bracket is a shifted character, but there's also a shifted period. So I put the machine in caps lock mode, and I was able to do this typing test by just typing the two characters as fast as I could, letting the memory buffer fill up as much as it can. And I typed a total of 273 characters in 1 minute, which amounts to about 55 words per minute at 5 characters per word, assuming. So 55 words per minute is the slowest maximum speed that you could expect on this machine, but that's, again, kind of unrealistic. You're typing these two characters that are on opposite sides of the print wheel, so the print wheel has to turn 180 degrees between each character. So the theoretical maximum speed is 144 by printing the same character in the repeat mode. This is the worst case print speed. So you're, in practice, what maximum print speed you should expect will be somewhere between 55 and 144, depending on the actual text itself, how far apart the character pairs are. So this next test I also did before I found the spec sheet on the typewriter. I wanted to see how fast it would type, so I chose to type hyphens in the auto repeat mode, and I typed this in 1 minute. I typed 544 hyphens, and that amounts to 109 words per minute, assuming 5 characters per word. So even though the spec sheet says it'll type 12 characters per minute, well, that is probably in burst mode in a short period of time. But if you do it continuously and fill up the memory buffer, then it's actually limited to about 109 words per minute, because I was basically repeating the lines with a character down, with my finger down on the key, and it has to do carriage returns, and I'm typing as it's doing the carriage return. So it's filling up the memory buffer. So again, 109 words per minute is really the practical speed limit of how fast it'll type with the same character. Now, this is with the WPT-150. If you go with those higher-end Nakajima typewriters, they have a bigger memory buffer, and they probably will actually, in practice, in practical terms, type faster than that. Now, the question is, how fast is that really? Well, my Olivetti Praxis 48, in the manual it says it'll type 803 characters per minute, which amounts to like 160 words a minute. And I know that my friend Kevin, his IBM Electromatic, which is a pre-World War II type bar electric, it'll do probably faster than the Praxis, or at least as fast as 160. I think the all-time speed record of typing was on an IBM Electromatic, and it was over 200 words a minute. The Selectrics, though, are not nearly as fast as that. They were probably in the low 100s. So it's possible that one of the higher-end Nakajima machines, higher than the 150, will probably type about as fast as you would expect a Selectric to type, but not nearly as fast as some of the high-end electric type bar machines that can be much faster. So next, I wanted to look at how well the machine does lift-off corrections. So what I did here was I typed the word TAST in both lowercase and uppercase, and then I corrected the letter A to the letter E on both of these. And on this kind of cream-colored resume paper, you can't really tell that I did the correction, at least with those particular letter combinations. I also did an entire word erase test on the same paper. I typed the word test, lowercase, and then I erased the entire word. And here you can see the imprint of the characters in the paper, and this is like embossing. The characters are actually physically embossed into the fibers of the paper, and you will see evidence of that based on the particular kind of paper you're using. I wanted to get back to the topic of the print wheels and what are the order of the characters. So this is the order starting in the 12 o'clock position, going, I think, counterclockwise as you're looking at the characters. I couldn't see any particular logic to the way these characters are listed, other than lowercase are all grouped together here and uppercase are all here, and upper and lowercase are in the same order respectively. But this doesn't go by order of the keys on the keyboard, and it also doesn't go by alphabetical order. Neither does it go by standard cryptologic letter frequency for English. However, they do have like UEOIA, all the vowels grouped together in one area. So that is about the only logic I can see. So this is using some multi-purpose printer paper. This is very low-end paper, not in any way considered to be high-end. I'm going to do a word erase test. So let's just type the word test, and now let's just hit, I'll just hit the erasing one character at a time. So let's go indexing this up. So as you can see, the film has been lifted off of the paper, but there's still an impression of the characters embossed in the paper. So in terms of correcting, it is not invisible. So as I've been typing letters to people using this machine, I've had to do some corrections because I'm sloppy. And I've noticed this same problem with the characters. You can still see the ghost of the previous character. So what I've been using are some correction tabs, and let's just do a test here. Okay. So you can see now using correction tabs on the white paper, I can actually cover up the embossing or the ghost of the previous character. This is an artifact of the force of the imprint of the print wheel. It embosses the character into the paper. So even when you lift off the film, depending on the quality of the paper, I would advise using correction tabs if you want it to truly be invisible looking. Okay, there you can see the take-up spool of the correction tape and the letters that have been lifted off. Here is the supply side. This is the original correction tape that came with this machine when I bought it. Now, I should say that the Selectric 2 and 3 correction tapes use the same orange spools. They will physically fit, but the IBM tape has a really strong adhesive on the working side of the correction tape, where these Daisywheel correction tape ribbons are a pressure-activated adhesive, and so when you touch them with your finger, they don't feel sticky. Now, I tried putting an IBM tape in my Brother SX4000, and it wouldn't work at all because the IBM tape was literally sticking to the guides in there, and it would just get jammed up. I have not tried it yet, the IBM tape, with this machine, but it looks to me like it's probably going to have the same problem because all it needs to do is touch the plastic guide and it'll stick to it, because the IBM tape is much stickier. But I think the problem is that the imprint force on this machine is heavy enough that even with a better liftoff, it would still emboss the paper, because if you look up here, I'm actually lifting off all the carbon film. The problem is not the liftoff. The problem is being embossed into the paper. So the force of this little solenoid lever hitting the type wheel pedals is heavy enough of a force that it embosses the paper. Now, there is a setting to lighten up the copy setting on it, and I've done that test, and there is a little bit of effect it makes, but it still embosses the paper to some degree. So we see here on my little cheat sheet, impression control, so code letter A is the lowest impression. So let's go code A. And now let's do maybe the same test. So we'll type So this is the lightest impression setting, and compared between, this was the heaviest setting, I think it's default, this is the lightest. You can see the embossing looks a little fainter in the paper here, but it's still significant enough that it doesn't make correction invisible unless you typed over it with something else, with some other text. I wanted to point out to you also that there is a viewing window in the ribbon cartridge, this little slot right here, and you can tell how much ribbon is left. Similar to an audio cassette tape, you could look and see how much tape you had on one of the reels just by looking at it like that, but I still have quite a bit left. So here is the ribbon itself taken out of the machine and flipped upside down. This little yellow recess is the drive sprocket for the cassette that actually moves the tape. That engages with this little plus-shaped extension on the mechanism itself. This is what actually advances the ribbon tape. When you're in 10, 12, or 15 characters per inch, the speed at which this moves depends upon the size of the typeface, or the characters per inch of the typeface. Now, this also reminds me that This particular ribbon I'm using is a correctable ribbon, meaning it's a one-time use only, but it spaces itself wide enough so you have a fresh ribbon between each character. But there is a different kind of a ribbon you can get that is called a multi-strike ribbon. And the way that works is it simply moves the ribbon much slower, so the characters actually overlap, but it's multi-strike, so it still prints the characters normally. But the difference is the multi-strike ribbon doesn't lift off. The lift-off correction doesn't work as well as this one-time use correctable tape. Now I wanted to show you how to get into the alternate keyboard mode. So if you look at the number characters, you have a number, a shifted character, then an alternate shifted character. You get into the alternate shifted characters by pressing Code and Keyboard 2. So now if we go Shift Lock and type these characters, instead of getting numbers, we get the alternate character set. Now to take it back to the original character set, you just press Code and that Keyboard 2 again. It double clicks to tell you, or double beeps to tell you that it is back to normal mode. And I can get out of the Shift Lock by pressing the Shift key again. Well, another good question people have is, Joe, are you going to be using this machine very much, or did you buy it just to make one video and that was it? Well, be honest with you, I've used this quite a bit, and it's become quite handy at doing things like addressing envelopes. I oftentimes am a little conscious about, I don't like to print envelopes on a small typeface typewriter, and especially one with a cloth ribbon, because I'm always afraid that, you know, it's hard enough getting letters properly mailed and delivered. I don't want to give the Postal Service any excuse to not deliver a letter because they couldn't read the printing. A machine like this does perfect printing, right? Carbon film printing, 10 character print wheel. It's a great machine for doing envelopes. Wide enough you can do a number 10 envelope. And so I find myself using it for that a lot, but surprisingly, I use it quite a bit for other things. In fact, I just mailed off a couple letters the other day. One of the letters was a 2-page letter. The first page I did with the Smith Corona Electric, and the second page I did with this. And it's a lot of fun typing with a carbon film typewriter with a lift-off correction, which sounds like that's what an IBM Selectric 2 or 3 would offer you in terms of features. Interchangeable type elements, lift-off correction, carbon film imprint. That's true. I happen to have a Selectric 721 cloth ribbon cartridge, no built-in correction. What I've discovered is I'm much more likely to be using this machine than the IBM. The IBM is very heavy. Just to move it from that table over to here, it's quite heavy, and it has cloth imprint, no correction. So this machine, I don't know, it ends up being very practical, a practical typing tool, as that's what I expected it to be. And as always, stay creative and have yourselves a great day, and bye-bye for now.